You're listening to the Face Value Podcast, episode 186. But aren't we in an O-word epidemic? Oh, let's do it.
Perfect.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Face Value Podcast. I'm your host, Vinnie Wellesby. My pronouns are they, them. I'm so excited to talk to you today, to be with you today, to be in your ear today. Thanks for choosing the Face Value Podcast to listen to. You're the best. Hey, if you want some training at your company, if you have a company and you have a DEI person or a DEI group or an employee resource group or a DEI committee, or maybe you have none of those things. You're like, well, I wish I did at my company. But hey, I don't know if you know this, but I do corporate training. So yeah. And so I don't scare people off. My corporate training isn't under the Fierce Fatty brand because I feel like people are scared of that. Not everyone, obviously, you like it. But the corporate side of my business is called Weight Inclusive Consulting. And yeah, if you ever want to know more about that, you can go to weightbiastraining.com. I have a couple of resources. If you go there, weightbiastraining.com, I have a free This is a Fat Positive Space poster. So you can print that off and put that at your desk, in your office, at home, wherever. And also a guide how to create a size inclusive workplace. Both of those are free guides for you, or not both of them are free guides. That's one free guide and one free poster. So just go to weightbiastraining.com. And there you go. A little present for you. Today we're talking about the O-word epidemic. And in case you get triggered or get activated when you see these headlines about the cost of fatness in society and what a terrible burden fat people are, and you feel kind of lost because you think, well, aren't there more fat people around? Are fat people a burden? They're saying that fat people cost $17 trillion a second. Is that true? We're going to be talking about that today so that you can feel a little bit more confident about how these figures are constructed, what they miss out, what they include, which they shouldn't include, and just a little bit of history about this stuff. So first off, I want to tell you what epidemic means. So from the dictionary, epidemic, affecting or tending to affect a disproportionately large number of individuals within a population, community, or region at the same time. Excessively prevalent, contagious. Characterized by a very widespread growth or extent of relating to constituting an epidemic. Okay, so affecting a disproportionately large number of individuals. Okay, so let's say that most people live in bigger bodies, and with the way that they're saying it here, affect. It's the way you view fat bodies. Like, are fat bodies something bad and negative and shouldn't be around? Then you would say, well, I am not affected with fatness. I just am fat. Whereas people who think that fatness is bad would say, yes, we are affected by a disproportionately large number of individuals within the population. And then the next point here, excessively prevalent. Are fat people excessively prevalent and be contagious? I don't know about you, but I've never actually infected anyone with my fat. Have you? Have you worked out how we can do that so we can infect all of the thins with our fatness? Wouldn't that be wouldn't that be amazing? Just go around and just, rub up against a thin person, and 2 days later they have a cough, and then all of a sudden they put on hundreds of pounds. Have you seen that happen? I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, but you never know. And part 3 of that definition is characterized by a very widespread growth or extent of. So, are people fatter? People have got a little fatter since the 1970s, but straight-sized people aren't getting fatter, and weight has been relatively stable in populations for decades. Also, as we are humans are learning to fight diseases and live longer, we're just getting bigger as humans. We're getting taller, right? And to a little extent, although not really, since the 70s, but not more recently, our bodies have got a little bit bigger. Is it at excessive, prevalent, contagious levels? No, it's simply not. It's just not true that every single year people are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's out of control. And it's just not accurate as to what is happening with population levels. And even if people were getting bigger, it's not making us unwell at a population level, because we're living the longest in human history. You might be saying, well, hang on, Vinny. I've heard that quote. The quote is, this generation of kids will not outlive their parents due to fatness. Remember, there was that quote, kids are going to die before their parents. Well, that quote is definitely backed by science. It's definitely not just one dude saying that was his prediction and opinion based on no science at all. Oh, wait, it is! So, a pediatric gastroenterologist, he was on that, remember that show? Not show, it was a movie, Super Size Me, with Morgan Spurlock. He was on that. And he just thought, I think that fat kids are going to die before their parents because they're so fat and disgusting. Has it happened? No. Did he have loads of data and science and evidence and etc. to back up this statement? No, he just picked it out of his arse. So this is the guy that said this is someone called William Klisch. And this is a quote from The O-Word Crisis is a Myth by Harriet Brown. And Harriet writes, in 2002, William Klisch, a pediatric gastroenterologist featured on the movie Super Size Me, told a reporter from the Houston Chronicle, if we don't get this O-word epidemic in check for the first time in this century, children will be looking forward to a shorter life expectancy than their parents. As Klisch later admitted, he had absolutely no evidence for this frightening scenario. It was based on his, quote, intuition, which didn't stop it from being replayed in the media and cited by researchers. So Klisch's doomsday scenario lives on, in part because it's frightening. Yeah. And it makes a good headline, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Right? And those types of stories sell. People are interested in learning about how fat people are walking around and, contaging the world with their fatness, and how fat people are awful, right? That sells newspapers. It's, quote, interesting, although it is not true what this guy said. But that sticks. That's probably stuck in your noggin. If you've been exposed to that, that's probably stuck in your noggin about how awful fatness is, and how this generation, who knows what generation he's talking about, the generation from 2002, is going to have a shorter life expectancy than their parents because of fatness. Yeah, not so great. Also, the categories of what is considered, quote, normal weight or O-weight have changed because of the influence and lobbying of diet companies. They're also arbitrary numbers. You'd think the BMI, obviously we know if you listen to this podcast, the BMI is bullshit, but you'd think the BMI, they've calculated something. No, the categories are 25 to 30, 35 to 30, 30 to 35, 35 to 40, etc. because rounding to 5 sounded good. It just sounded like it was easy to remember. So no actual scientific reason. And the most recent change in 1998 from the National Institute of Health sparked the rhetoric around the, quote, epidemic, which came from an overnight change in numbers on a chart. Within a day, millions of people were classed as too fat when their bodies had not changed at all. So lobbying from diet pharmaceutical companies saying, let's tell everyone they're too fat. And then overnight, someone, piece of paper, yep, these people are too fat now. Oh my God, we've got so many fat people. What the heck? Did anyone actually get fatter? No. On paper they are, because we changed the definitions. Make it make sense. And obviously the whole premise of O word is based on the BMI, which is 200 years old and data collected from white cis European men, never meant to be a measure of individuals or health. O epidemic presumes that people who fall into higher weight categories are automatically unhealthy and a burden on society due to increased fat tissue on their bodies. And there is no evidence to prove that actually having more adipose or fat tissue on your body leads to poorer health outcomes. We just don't have that data. We don't have that information. But what we do know that can cause poorer health outcomes is 1, weight cycling, aka going on a diet, 2, subpar or lack of access to healthcare, and 3, experiencing anti-fatness. We also have great evidence to show that O people have reduced mortality compared to normal weight people, which is called the O paradox. The paradox being, we thought fat people were dying all over the place, but they ain't. It's a paradox. We just can't explain it. The word paradox means a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that when investigated or explained may prove to be well-founded or true. So that's a huge study that came from the CDC and Catherine Flegel. I think we have a whole episode on it. We must have dedicated a whole episode to it. The O word paradox. Just Google the Obesity paradox, fierce fatty, and you'll probably find an episode on it. Yes. So why these figures are trash is so you'll see all these headlines. Just a few headlines from the UK, which is just so fucking anti-fat. Newspaper headlines: Britain's child O word disgrace. Next headline: we must win O word war for the sake of the NHS. The next one: O word Britain. Britain is just fat. From The Guardian, meant to be a little bit more intelligent. O word, bigger cost for Britain than war and terror. Britain spending X billion a year dealing with the healthcare and social costs of an increasingly O population, study finds. The study finds is dog shit. So these figures, they're not accurate and they assume that weight equals health. So its numbers are derived from fat people who have health conditions that are associated with fatness, but not known to be caused by fatness. So if a fat person has type 2 diabetes, then they have a according to this data, they have a condition that's caused by fatness. If a thin person has type 2 diabetes, they don't have a condition caused by fatness. They just have type 2 diabetes. So you wouldn't then say, okay, what's the cost of thinness? Well, let's calculate all the thin people who have type 2 diabetes. Well, therefore, that's what the cost of thinness is on society. But they do that with fat people. So there's no way to predict how many people die from fatness in any accurate way. And the reason for this is that there are 0 health conditions that have been shown to be caused. Well, there's a big word there, caused by fatness. And something only fat people get versus health conditions being correlated with fatness, and something that people of all sizes get. So that's a big thing there. Causation, correlation. There's nothing that only fat people get that thin people don't also get. It's presumed that the presence of a fat body in society means the presence of disease. It's assumed if we have fewer fat people, then we will be more healthy as a population. And this is straight up faulty logic. It's faulty logic. The next reason why these figures are trash, it stigmatizes humans and supports healthism and ableism. So it states that human beings are a burden for a non-modifiable identity factor, body size. You're a burden because of something that is non-modifiable about you. No human being is a burden, even if they are unhealthy, even if they, quote, caused their lack of health. All people are worthy of healthcare, and disabled people or those with chronic conditions should be seen at minimum equally important parts of our society. Another thing is it doesn't consider the cost of anti-fat bias. Which is a huge problem with these figures. So Dr. Karmpal Singh et al. And friends points out in I'll link to everything is there more to the equation? Weight bias and the costs of word. So Dr. Singh points out that most, if not all, of the estimated costs of fatness can actually be attributed to anti-fat bias. Dr. Angela Meadows demonstrates that anti-fat bias has a powerful impact on the health of fat people. Quote, chronic or repeated stress over time can result in multi-system biological dysregulation, a concept known as allostatic load, which is linked with a wide range of disease conditions, including cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, and cancer. So calculating the cost of fatness without even considering anti-fat bias is deeply problematic. And the whole even calculating the cost of fatness and being like, oh my God, we're so fat, la la la, contributes to anti-fat bias. So even this whole, all of those really awful headlines existing increases the quote costs of fatness on society because people are experiencing more anti-fat bias. Next, why these figures are dog shit. They are used to advocate for the erasure of fat people. In Canada's most recent report on the, quote, cost of fatness, they point out that they don't really know why people are fat. They don't know how to make people smaller. And also that fat people have reduced mortality compared to, quote, normal weight people. Okay, let me just repeat that. We don't know why people are fat. We don't know how to make people small. And fat people have reduced mortality compared to, quote, normal weight people. But they still advocate for more policy and research to erase fat people from society. What? This is a huge, this, I did a whole episode on this report from Canada about the cost of word. Oh my lordy. And I was just reading it being like, what the the fuck? Hang on. What? They had all of these things. Hey, we don't know why people are fat. Hey, we don't know how to make people thin. Hey, fat people live longer. Oh, but still, we need to make fat people disappear, obviously. What? Did you read what you just wrote? I don't understand. I don't understand. Ay. So all of this fuels fat hate. In a press release in 2022, the UK government said, O-word costs the NHS a massive $6 billion annually, and this is set to rise over $9.7 billion each year by 2050. The new investment, what investment is it? An investment in weight loss, quote, treatments. Announced today is expected to save the NHS billions over time and ensure that vital funds are spent on key frontline services. So rhetoric like this, which positions fat people as stealing vital funds from, quote, key frontline services, deeply contributes to people's perceptions that fat people are lazy, unintelligent, unhealthy, greedy, generally unwanted and undesirable. And we don't need government-sponsored bigotry, although the UK is very good at it. And all this to say, there's no reliable way to make fat people into thin people. So let's pretend, let's say, fat people are costing the world, allegedly, billions of dollars every single moment. And fat people are horrible and greedy, and we all want to be a burden on society and enjoy it and all of that. Let's just say that's all true. It still wouldn't matter because we don't have any reliable way to make people smaller. Fat people exist, we always have, we always will, and instead of calculating the burden of fat people being alive, a better use of funds could be to continue to research on how to reduce anti-fat bias and how to provide all people with equitable, evidence-based care. Weird. I know, weird. Word. Also, the data in here is if a fat person has anything that's associated with fatness, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, whatever it is, that person would then be calculated in the cost of fatness, right? Not only that, these figures also look at things like how many days off did a fat person take? Well, if a fat person takes a day off, the reason why they take a day off is because, wonder why, because they're fat. Therefore, they're costing society billions of dollars because they took a day off. I don't know, to go whatever it is that they're going to do, ride a bike, watch some Netflix, go to the doctor, be sick, whatever it is. So they're saying, so looking at this, there's an appendix that Singh et al. in that piece is talking about the costs of fatness and how it's broken down. And so they look at health, societal, and workplace. And it's saying one of the things here, severe O attributed to the increased absenteeism, which cost 5.38 billion. And then how much increased absenteeism does severe, in quotation marks, O, like how many more days are fat people taking, allegedly, because of their fatness? A whopping 1 day. Oh my God! So a super fat person has allegedly takes 1 day more off in a year than someone who is smaller than super fat. What could a super fat person be experiencing? Are they taking a day off? A whole day? Oh my God. Are they taking a day off because of their fatness? Could they also be experiencing a shit ton of bias? A workplace that's probably not accommodating them in any way? Are they denied access to healthcare Yes, especially when we're talking about people who are the largest fat people in our society, the amount of shit that they have to go through. Like, the list is endless. And could that increased shit that they have to go through in every different aspect of their life because of anti-fat bias leads to maybe one day extra a year? I think that sounds about right. But let's not consider that. We'll just say they're costing the economy 5.38 billion because they're so fat and awful. Obviously. Don't be silly. And as well, if someone dies and they're fat, they died from fatness. It's a comorbidity, right? Someone gets hit by a car. Wow. They died while fat, so they died from fatness, obviously. It's just so. So I posted about this on the old Instagram, and there's a couple of comments that I wanted to point out. Is Tigress, who was on the show a few episodes ago, said, on top of everything you've said here, and even more irresponsible reporting, sometimes the cost of O-word is the cost of everyone who has the condition associated with being fat, including the cost of treating all the thin people who have that condition. The cost of treating everyone on earth who has diabetes is not a cost of O-word. Millions of thin people have that. Isn't it just bananas? Like, Tigress totally spot on here. So if a thin person has type 2 diabetes, well, they are contributing towards the cost of fatness in society, allegedly. They're not fat, but Harry M, that fat empowerment chick, said, I read a study recently that talked about the burden of O-words and the, quote, social impact, and it gave a figure of 11,463 euros per person per year. So I read it a little further. These costs included the price of mandatory health insurance, speech therapists, acupuncturists, household expenditures, aka groceries and dining out, clothes, transportation costs, attempts at weight loss, and social activities. Their conclusion, O-words have a considerable impact. The societal costs. Sorry, what? Do straight-sized people not pay for food, drink, transport, clothes, and socializing? So yeah, these so-called research findings will tell you anything you want to hear. So the other costs in here that is claimed that the cost of fatness is things like giving fat people access. So giving fat people a gown that fits at the hospital, or having a wheelchair that is bigger. So, spending on medical spending. So it's literally the existence of fatness that they're saying costs, but they're not doing the same for the cost of, quote, thinness. Cost. There is no cost to any, these things. But they're not saying, okay, well, of our medical equipment, 95% of, it's probably less than that. It's probably like more than that. It's probably like 99% of the medical equipment costs that we spend are on straight-sized people, are on equipment that only hold straight-sized people, are on blood pressure cuffs that accommodate straight-sized people. 1%, 2%, whatever it is, I'm just plucking these numbers out of thin air, we spend on equipment that accommodates bigger bodies, which is, by the way, a lot of people have bigger bodies, which is so bizarre that we have so little equipment for people in bigger bodies. So all of that other cost for medical equipment, that's not a burden. But when it comes to accommodating someone who has a larger body, then all of a sudden that's a cost and a burden. The cost of, imagine if we calculated the cost of thinness. It's so ridiculous that I'm even saying, the cost of thinness. But it's so ridiculous that we say cost of fatness. Imagine if we calculated the cost of thinness. The cost of thinness would be way like a medical equipment. It's almost exclusively only made for thin people, right? So it'd be gargantuan in comparison to the cost of equipment for people in bigger bodies, right? So anyway, health as well, diseases / complication. Okay, so, that's all diseases that are associated with fatness that thin people get as well. So that's flawed. Increased life and medical insurance. Okay, so increased life and medical insurance. That is based on the BMI, which is total bullshit, and based on weight bias, because they're charging fat people more because of the presumption that fat people die sooner and have more fat-related conditions. Premature mortality and reduced quality of life. Again, we have seen the data to show that actually people who are smaller fat live longer than people who are, quote, normal weight, and people who are very fat, there's not really that much of a difference between them and, quote, normal weight people. Reduced quality of life. What could that be from? Anti-fat bias, yes. Next, they look at workplace, private monetary losses due to reduced output, job performance, and labor income / profit. So they're blaming fat people now because the company, for company profits. What? They're blaming fat people for monetary losses due to reduced output. Where is the data that fat people have reduced output? Where does this come from? Absenteeism, including paid sick leaves. Oh, look at, fat people using the benefits that they are legally entitled to. Look at that. That's terrible. I'm just blinking in disbelief at this. So the societal that they say is increased economic burden / reduced tax income. Fat people are paid less because of this is the way that society views fat people, because of shit like this. And so fat people are paid less. So therefore fat people are a burden because they're paid less because of anti-fat bias. What? What? Increased tax revenue used for healthcare. Where is the data? What? Higher treatment, physician and equipment costs. Are we saying that do we have the same data for people in smaller bodies? Fat people are causing longer wait times in primary care and hospitals. If that were true, could it be because of the absolute dog shit healthcare that many fat people experience means that they're less likely to go to a healthcare provider because they know they're just going to be told to lose weight? Could it be then when they become very, very sick, then they will need to access a higher level of care because they've been ignored? Or even if they do go, then we're just dismissed. Just go lose some weight. So what is the cause? Is it the fat person existing, or is it subpar healthcare and anti-fat bias? Oi, 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 oi. It just, so often we take a lot of this stuff for granted, of course, fat people cost society more money. And you think, well, of course, people are going to use common sense. Researchers and people collecting this data are going to use common sense. And of course, they're going to be able to, they look at, say, okay, a fat person and say, okay, let's look at the diseases or conditions or whatever it is that's definitely caused by fatness. Oh, well, we don't have any evidence. Well, that's okay. We'll just do associated with. Okay, so let's just do associated with. Let's do conditions associated with fatness. Okay, so every fat person that has any type of condition, that's all caused by fatness, right? Okay, yeah. And at that point, someone should step in and be like, this doesn't sound right. maybe, listen up here, maybe we should use more nuance with collecting this data and actually use, evidence and reliable practices, and should we be even doing a cost of the quote burden of fat people? Isn't that just an identity, like fatness? Like, if we're doing a cost of fatness thing, should we not be doing also a cost of blondness on society, the cost of tallness on society, the cost of having blue eyes on society? Everyone that has blue eyes, if they have, a sore toe, then that's the cost of blue eyes for you, those greedy blue-eyed people with their sore toes. And the reason why that there isn't, and I'm sure there are people in the, collecting the data that's like, this is kind of fishy, this doesn't sound right, this is kind of misleading. There's definitely people in there who are raising the red flags. Because anti-fat bias is so well ingrained in the DNA of our society, it takes a very brave person, especially in that field. Imagine you've got a job and you're getting paid to calculate these costs. Would you really stand up and be like, hey, fat people, maybe we don't have that data to show that fatness causes these things, and the correlation, causation, and is this really ethical to be doing that? No, you probably just keep your head down, collect the paycheck, and align with the common narrative that we have out there. Because, quote, we all know that fatness is this terrible thing. It must be very difficult to have differing opinions or to steer the ship, because this is huge ship of healthcare and the ship of anti-fat bias, and say, maybe everything that we've been talking about for all of these decades is not really that helpful. That's a big thing, right? And then when you have people who are like, yeah, we fucking love this, we love this data, like government saying like we need this data because we need to understand the burdens that these types of people have on our society, and so that we can try and mitigate these costs by trying to get fat people to become thinner people. It makes sense why people want this information and this data, but it's just so misguided. There's so many faulty premises to so much of this. I wonder if people are gonna stop making these reports. Probably not, because I would suspect that there is a lot of lobbying from pharmaceutical, healthcare, weight loss companies to get this type of data, because it shows what a terrible problem, quote, fatness is. So therefore, our drugs, our pills, our diets are so needed, because what a better way to show that fat people need not exist is by saying that they cost the world billions of dollars. For a non-modifiable identity factor, which many people believe is modifiable, but it's just, we don't have that. We just don't have that information to say that it is, that we can, in any type of meaningful amount or for any type of, length of someone's life. Oh, all of this just has got me on my fucking, annoyed me. Something to talk about is that some people like on my Instagram have said, well, they're not. This is bad because they're not calculating the costs of alcohol use or like other things that people perceive as choice-based illnesses. Well, I don't really agree with that, because I'll tell you why. Someone who is using alcohol, we know that, someone using alcohol or someone using drugs or whatever it is, that a lot of the times those people are in an addiction. And we know that that is not a choice, right? I don't want to say, even if something that I don't agree with, say, I don't know, someone uses a gun and shoots their foot or whatever, I still wouldn't want to be like, oh, listen, people who shoot their foot are such a cost on society, on our tax dollars, because I think that we shouldn't be talking about humans that way. The other side of that is the cost of allowing guns in society, on like literally guns killing people. Like, I think that's really important, obviously. But I think people's personal choices is, I don't care if someone is using healthcare because they're doing something that I have said that I think is bad. Because it's got nothing to do with me, right? Because there's some people have that thought of, well, if my tax dollars are going to support someone who is outside of doing something that I don't like, then that's bad. Well, that's not how I feel. Like, I pay taxes, and many different types of benefits I will not get. For example, benefits for, I won't have children using the school systems because I don't want kids. But I'm really pleased that kids in our society can go to school, and if people get the access to university, or kids get reduced dental costs or whatever. Or in Canada, there's like some dental thing that's coming out next year. People who have a lower income and elderly and children get some parts of some free dental. I'm probably not going to benefit from that at the beginning. I don't care. I'm pleased that the elders and young people and very low income people, I would prefer if everyone would get it, just because I want everyone to be happy and, all that type of stuff. So, I feel like that other way of viewing of like, I need to get my share and everything needs to be equal, comes from a very conservative and unkind way of looking at humanity. I want everyone to be happy and to be able to access healthcare and to feel like they are welcome in society and not like they are a burden. And I wonder if in the UK, I know I've definitely felt this. So I'm in Canada, in case you didn't know. I'm in Canada, but I'm British-Irish. I spent the first couple of decades in the UK. Soon it will be like in 5 years I would have been spent more time in Canada than in the UK. Oh my, that's scary. Anyway, my experience of being in the UK and accessing the NHS, National Health Service, is that my belief was, my perception was, do not use the NHS unless you're fucking dying. Unless you are really fucking sick. Don't go to the doctor. Don't spend any time talking to the doctor unless, you need to be in there. Quick. Just hurry the fuck up. Get in, get out, and you better be sick. If not, you are a burden on the NHS. And those messages, just constant. That's how I feel. If you're British, you might be like, yeah, I feel that too. And I feel like, that's a very kind of post-World War II, stiff upper lip, all band together, which, all banded together, great, but also people deserve healthcare. And it wasn't until I came to Canada, so when I left the UK, I took an inhaler. Pretty much that was all I ever took, an inhaler. I came to Canada, I got diagnosed with so many things because I felt a little bit more comfortable, even though we do have healthcare here in this kind of similar situation as the UK. I hadn't been indoctrinated with those messages of you better fucking be dead before coming in here. And I felt like I could say, oh, what about this? Now I take loads of different medications because there was things that I was ignoring in the UK that I didn't feel safe enough to go to the doctor and say, hey, I feel cold and tired all the time. And they'd be like, oh, it's because your thyroid is destroyed. oh, because you think you're not going to go to the doctor because you're cold and tired. But in Canada, I felt like I could, and all the other things. So anyway, why was I talking about that? Is that I don't want people to feel like that. And I'm sure there are people who, I don't know if you want to use it, overuse. I don't even like the thought of that. If people need help, and I can just imagine, some right-wing person being like, oh, there's people who go in and go to the doctor every day and all they've got is a sniffle. And I'm sure there are people who maybe go to the doctor when then they're fine. But obviously something else is going on, right? They obviously need something from that interaction. So I don't know. I just want to be nice. Let's just be nice to everyone, okay? Okay? That's the one that I want. So I'm just going to, put that out there because I'm just feeling very annoyed with all of this stuff, that we're talking about humans in this way. And know that in my world, I'm creating a nice community around me. And I do have a nice community around me where we're all kind to each other and my neighbors are all nice and all my friends we don't talk about each other like that. And so there you go. That's my consolation. I hope you have that. I hope you have that too. You have people around you that make you feel like you're not a burden and you're not a terrible person for being fat. And if you don't have that, then fat community's out there. And you might say, well, there's no fat community where I live. And that's okay. You can access fat community on the tinternetweb.com. So you can just go on the internet and find people, even if it's just following other fat people and joining Facebook groups that have fat people, or watching shows with fat people, or reading books with fat people. Segue, perfect segue. You might say, Vinny, I don't know where to find those things. Guess what? You can find those things in that is in the size diversity resource guide, which you can get for $5 if you go and join my Ko-fi. The link will be somewhere around here, wherever you're listening. Ko-fi, kofi.com/fierce fatty. You'll find it. So for $5, join the baby fat tier, you'll get the size diversity resource guide. And that's going to help me keep making the podcast for you, and bring you fatty goodness every month. All right. So if you want to do that, great. If not, then, that's fine. That's all good. That's all good. No pressure. You do you, okay? You do you. And for the people who are supporting me on Ko-fi, oh my goodness, you are the best. I really appreciate it. I find it so strange that people, I don't know, support my work. I don't know why I find it strange, but it's just so awesome. It's just so cool. Yeah. So thank you. I really appreciate you. If you are a member on my Ko-fi, shout out to you. You're the best. You're the dog's bollocks. You're the, what's another word for that? No, can't think of it. I was going to say there's another rhyming thing. That dog's bollocks is not rhyming though, is it? So anyway, I'll stop babbling on. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Sending you big fatty hugs. And I will see you in the next episode. Remember to stay fierce fatty. You are worthy. You always were. You always will be. See you later. Tatty bye.